Well, welcome to this Gifts of God talk. And Sandra and I are in Philadelphia. This is very symbolic. The birthplace of the nation. The Declaration of Independence was signed here, was written here by Thomas Jefferson. And you can even go to the building where he wrote it. And then down the street is the Independence Hall, where they had the first Continental Congress, and that was where they all got together and said, we're going to form this new nation, we're going to break away, we're going to risk everything, our honor, our fortunes, our everything, and really go for this, which they did. And of course, now we have it. But I think more importantly, what we have as a nation, not that I'm a nationalistic person, but something that came out of this new world is A Course in Miracles. And to me, it's equally as important as the founding fathers getting together 200 and what, 60, 50 years ago, say 76, 200, yeah. In a few years, it'll be 250 years. So equally as important as that gathering is this document, and it is a document called A Course in Miracles. And in Philadelphia, there was something that came to me to draw this, not a comparison, but evolution, I would say. Evolution is a better word for the notion of freedom, the notion of independence, and the notion of a divine order coming in, a divine law coming in. And what is that divine law, and how does that impact us? Because that's basically what the Course in Miracles is. It's a divine order. It's a restructuring of how we think, which is as revolutionary, in my opinion, perhaps even more revolutionary than the Declaration of Independence was 250 years ago. So I just wanted to kind of pull something up. I actually, pulled up this Declaration of Independence. And there are some very key lines that I wanted to bring to our attention. And then also some very key lines from the Course that I wanted to bring to our attention. And this is the notion of freedom. What principles, what laws do we live by, and what impact do those laws have on us? And are we applying those to our life, or are we not applying to those to our life? So I think probably the most famous line in this Declaration of Independence was when Jefferson wrote, "We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights," that would be like rights that can't ever be taken away from you. They're unalienable. You cannot ever be without those rights. And that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now that's probably the most important line in the whole Declaration of Independence. And then he goes on to say that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men and deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and institute a new government, laying its foundations on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to effect their safety and happiness. Okay, so basically what he's saying is all men are created equal. Everyone has this right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and that the government, the purpose of the government is to ensure these rights are instituted, are protected. And then when there's such a time that the government doesn't do that, then the people have the right to say no or overthrow that government. So now those are good words, those are lofty words. And I think, now, historically speaking, we're 250 years after all that and have gone through quite a few national struggles of identity and also questions of have we lived by those words? And of course, historians will point out right away, and rightly so, I think, that even in the moment that those words were penned by such beings as Jefferson and even, you could say, Washington and the Founding Fathers, they weren't totally being applied even by them, of course, because they were slaveholders. They owned property, they owned men who were obviously men, but they didn't consider them free men. And those men didn't have these, quote, unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So you could say, well, there were some inconsistencies, and there were. In fact, there were. And now, in this historical era, where we're looking with much more scrutiny about these ideals on which we founded a nation, we're trying to make amends for that. We're trying to, correct that and admit to the inconsistency. And I think we're doing a fairly good job with that process. I mean, even now, when you watch a very well-produced documentary on, say, Thomas Jefferson, invariably there are going to be some historians and some Black historians who are going to bring these points to the forefront and point out the inconsistencies, and I think rightly so. So any document that is as lofty as the Declaration of Independence, on which a whole nation is premised, is also subject to the scrutiny of it. First of all, is it true? Second of all, are we bringing the truth of it into the application? Okay, so the point I'm making is that you can blunder into a truth or something that's very lofty, and then even the person that makes the contact with it may not even be bringing it into application on a full scale, all right? On a full scale. So there were some blind spots that even beings such as Jefferson had, that did not permit him to even take that thought all the way. All men are created equal, Everyone is endowed by their creator with these unalienable rights: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, freedom, basically. So freedom he's talking about. So the premise of the New World was freedom. We want freedom from the old world. We don't want to be told by kings and royalty and the rule of divine right. You know, a lot of kings felt that they were rulers because God put them there. And that goes all the way back to the Egyptians. You know, when you think about the pharaohs thought they were incarnations of God. And you know, a lot of the European royalty felt the same. So it was not necessarily democracy, not necessarily a government of the people, by the people. It was a hierarchy. And so when the U.S. came along and said, well, no, we're going to create something different. And I think in many ways they used classical Greece as a model, because they were reading a lot of ancient, you know, classics from that period. And there was a golden age in Greece, you know, during the time of Socrates and a lot of the great Greek playwrights, where there was a democratic system and this kind of form of self-government was being explored. And a lot of the founding fathers of that day were very connected to this neoclassicism, this revival of some of the Greek ideals that even preceded the Roman ideals. You know, the Romans came much later, and they were, even though they had a quote unquote democratic government, it wasn't as pure as that of the Greeks. And then the Greeks became kind of the model for this Declaration of Independence, Constitution, Continental Congress. It was really more of a model. And even when you look at the architecture of the Washington landscape, you know, they even used a lot of Greek models and of architecture to put into the buildings and the structures. All right, but getting back to the document itself, this Declaration of Independence, all right, that was a revolutionary concept in self-governing that had probably not been put forth so strongly ever before on that scale. And it was put forth, and it was fought for, and many people died for it, and they were able to institute it. And then, of course, this question about, well, all men created equal was kind of still on the table, and that inconsistency was there. People, very astute people, looked at it, kept looking at it, and then this issue of slavery came up, and it wasn't until like another 100 years later, almost 100 years later, 77 years, Lincoln said, that the Civil War was fought and the abolishing of slavery happened. You know, so it took another 80 years for them to scratch their head and say, well, okay, maybe not all men are created equal, at least not in our practical systems, and we have to right that wrong and get the slavery abolished, which they did. But then, of course, there's the tendencies of humankind, even though you fought a war over it, still go on. And it took probably another 120 years for the Black people to even get close to a kind of equal status in society. And, you know, we know all about that, the civil rights movement, Martin Luther King, all of that. And it's still going on, you know, this kind of racial tension. And then recently, Sandra and I watched this very powerful documentary about the how America treated the Native Americans, right? The this idea of manifest destiny, that America had this right to kind of sweep across the whole continent and take over everything from the East Coast to the West Coast. And then what they had to do that was displace these indigenous people that had been living peacefully on the land for 10,000 years or more. They never built cities. They were just nomads. And there were these buffalo in the Great Plains, like 30 million of herds of millions of them, millions. Like there's an estimate that it was like 30, 40 million of these animals lived just freely on these open plains. And this was the food source for this whole culture of people that were nomadic. And they lived like that for tens of thousands of years. Well, so within a very short period of time, between I would say the early 1800s to like the 1880s, and this manifest destiny of America just sweeping across the continent. And they'd already displaced quite a few of the eastern indigenous people, along the eastern seaboard. They'd already sort of wiped them out. But now they're going across the whole nation. And not only do they want to take the land of all these indigenous people, but they literally wipe out their food source. In a matter of not even 20 years, from like 1870 to the end of the 1880s, there were 30 million buffalo before that, and they were under 1,000. They were almost extinct. So hunters just went out and literally wiped out these herds and sent the hides back, left the carcasses to just rot on the plains. And it's really a tragedy. What America did to quote unquote manifest its destiny across this continent, right? So again, we see inconsistency with all men are created equal. Every person is endowed with these divine, unalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. There was so much prejudice and so much racial, prejudice that certain people were created by God, but other certain people were kind of a lower human entity and not deserving of these more lofty ideals, which of course now we see is absolutely ridiculous and absolutely hypocritical of our lofty aspiration. So I think we all know that and we all see that. And if you're at all a student of any kind of history, you see the inconsistency. And we as quote unquote US people, like Americans, are almost embarrassed to even say, oh, well, I'm an American, because these inconsistencies are so great. And I'm not as strong a student of European history, but I'm sure you guys over there have similar things that you cringe about from your past and things that were done and so forth. But so here we are, and we have this document called this Declaration of Independence. And I think the opening statement, where all men are created equal and all men are deserving of this, all men and women are deserving of this unalienable rights of life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That is an absolutely true, lofty, divine statement. But now, have we brought it into application? I don't know. Has the nation brought it into application? It may be aspiring to that, but has it achieved it? I don't know. Probably not. Now, case in point, this thing called A Course in Miracles comes in. And it's interesting that it came in, the time that it actually came in was in the 1960s, because that's when Dr. Schucman was starting to receive the transmission, right? I think it was in 1966 or 1967. And when you look at the history of the US, that was like right in the middle of the Vietnam War. That was right in the middle of the movement, the civil rights movement with Martin Luther King. That was right in the middle of all these very terrible assassinations. You know, like Kennedy was assassinated, then Martin Luther King was assassinated, then Robert Kennedy was assassinated. And these were very lofty beings. They had their inconsistencies, but they had very high aspirations, like Jefferson and the founding fathers, right? They were kind of at that level. But at the same time that was going on was the same time Dr. Schucman was receiving the Course in Miracles, which is quite incredible. And now here's where I want to bring something to our attention that I think the Course will make absolutely clear to us and future generations who give it the attention. This is lesson 76. And I always found the numerology very not an accident. It's because the Declaration of Independence was signed on July 4th, 1776. So 76 is a very key number numerologically for this topic, right? So the Declaration of Independence was saying, okay, all men are created equal, and they're all endowed with unalienable rights, life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness. And the purpose of a government is to ensure that freedom, ensure that independence, right? And that's what made it the Declaration of Independence. And probably that's the loftiest political document written maybe in the history of humanity. Now, let's fast forward like a couple hundred years later, and now we're entering into this era of a lot of civil strife, a lot of, unjust war that we're engaged in. And now we have this thing called A Course in Miracles coming in. And lesson 76 is its own declaration of independence. It's so clear that it is when you see what it is. It says, I am under no laws but God's. Okay? I am under no laws but God's. Well, when you think about it in terms of freedom, in terms of independence, what does that mean to you? I am under no laws but God's. It renders governments, even church systems, even religions, obsolete. It's a higher thought. Okay, so let's just say that the order of society is established by certain political and social structures. And we have this, feudalism system in the Middle Ages, and this, rule by divine right that kings, queens, inherited through very specific family lineages, are kind of at the top of that that pyramid of control, right? And that provides a certain social order, certain structure, right? Okay, and then now we have this thing saying, okay, no, we're not under those laws. Every man was created equal. You can't say a king is over us anymore. And we established this new system of government, which is, at least in practical functioning, a democracy. And certain people, maybe not all people, have a say in that. So it's a collaborative venture. It's something where, rule by collaboration is more the order of the day than rule by a divinely appointed despot, right? So it's a bit higher. It's going up. It's becoming more broad. It's becoming more universal. And to a certain degree, we then see, well, yes, but it's not applying to everybody. The Indians were wiped out. The black people were enslaved, blah, blah, blah. It had some inconsistencies. Now you have this thing called the Course in Miracles, and it's telling us governments can't even really institute true laws, free laws, principles of order, let's say, principles of divine order, universal order, that brings not just equal rights, but it brings a vibration of joy. It brings a vibration of order. It brings a vibration of harmony. It basically institutes a kind of a heaven on this earth plane that the likes of humanity may never have seen before, right? So this is the purpose of the Course. It's to bring a new kind of an order that has nothing to do with governmental order. Now, I'm not saying governmental order isn't needed. If we didn't have traffic lights in the intersections, we'd probably have chaos and a lot of crashes, right? So you have to have certain things in place to keep this world that we're living in structured and orderly to a certain degree. But now, when it comes to the essence of our souls, the reality of our being, it's basically saying governments can't institute that. The laws of governments cannot introduce you to that kind of freedom. Now we're talking about freedom and independence, Declaration of Independence. And this Lesson 76 is a kind of declaration of independence. And when you take it all the way and you see it in relationship to other lessons in the Course, I'm not a body, I'm free, I'm still as God created me, I am spirit. There's this liberation that we have, not just from the physical dimension that we inhabit, but it's kind of a mental liberation as well. I'm under no laws but God's. Later on it says, my mind holds only what I think with God. I think only the thoughts of God, right? So it's also, and it says early in the text, this is mind training, right? You guys, your sickness or your problems don't originate in the physical realm. They originate in the mental realm. And you have all these problems in your physical realm because you're sick in your mental realm. And we have to deal with that, right? So the healing has to happen in the mind. And so let's get to it. And it does get to it. But then now it's saying you have these thoughts that you think you're under, and you call them laws. And we have to clear that up, because those are the source of the problems, right? I just want to go read this. Think of the freedom in the recognition that you are not bound by all the strange and twisted laws you have set up to save you. You really think that you would starve unless you have stacks of green paper strips and piles of metal discs? You really think a small round pellet or some fluid pushed into your veins through a sharpened needle will ward off disease and death? And you really think you are alone unless another body is with you? It is insanity that thinks these things. You call them laws and put them under different names in a long catalog of rituals that have no use and serve no purpose. You think you must obey the laws of medicine, of economics, and of health. Protect the body, and you will be saved. These are not laws, but madness. The body is endangered by the mind that hurts itself. The body suffers just in order that the mind will fail to see it is the victim of itself. The body's suffering is a mask the mind holds up to hide what really suffers. It would not understand it is its own enemy, that it attacks itself and wants to die. It is from this your laws would save the body. It is for this you think you are a body. All right, so this freedom, this declaration of independence, it's taking us to a realm that maybe we've never been in. And maybe the rest of humanity has not too often been there either. And yes, that's why we have quote unquote spiritual masters. I think Amma is probably under no laws but God's. I think Babaji definitely was under no laws but God's. And Christ himself, who scribed the Course in Miracles, who gave us the Course in Miracles, is under no laws but God's. And they realize they are, in essence, spirit, and they have no limitation. And they have command over the physical realm because they have such certainty that their identity is not bound by the physical realm. They really have the realization that they are spirit, that they are this self that is connected to everything, and this self that is ruler of the universe, right? They have certainty of that. And because they have the certainty, they can command the action of the self in whatever is needed, whatever's brought to their attention, and they see, oh, this is needed. They can respond to it in a very compassionate, effective way. And I think that's ultimately our aspiration, to get to that point in ourselves as well, where we have command over ourself, our true self, and that this being in the world is useful to us and also others, and we're of service. You know, it's like Babaji said, you know, truth, simplicity, love, and service to humanity. He was very particular about including that. Like, yes, you can realize the truth. Yes, you can keep your life simple without any extra baggage, right? Extra things. And yes, you can realize this love that's the force of the universe. But then what do you do with the realization? Well, you have to extend it. You have to give it. You have to serve your brothers and sisters. And that's the next step. That's the final stage, is when you see, well, I actually do have something to give, and I want to give it. And in that giving, that is the service. And whatever that is, whatever your talent is going to come forth, and that'll be what you're extending. So, but it begins by seeing, wow, I'm free. I'm under no laws but God's. Next week we're going to talk about surrender quite a lot in the mantra breathing and in the Friday blessing and so forth. And there is this element of surrender. Like when it says you think you're safe because you have these piles of metal discs and strips of green paper, and then you think, oh well, I'm healthy because I have these things. I can take a pill, I can do this. Part of our mind believes that. And I'm not saying give up your bank account, throw your money out the window. It's like we're still in this system. The Course would call it an illusion, but we're still in the illusion, and we have to move and function within the illusion, right? And we have to bring it to forgiveness. That's what it says. Yes, the world is still an illusion, even when its highest state. And what's the highest state? Well, the highest state was when you see everything through Christ's vision, which is a forgiven world. You're seeing that it is the illusion, but for whatever reason, we're here, and we have to make the best of it, and we have to extend the joy even to this dimension, and end the sorrow and the suffering even in this dimension. So it's a forgiven world, and that's our work to do, is to apply the forgiveness to it. And so we can forgive money, we can forgive drugs, we can forgive the needles, we can forgive the, all the codependent relationships we've set up in our life, all of our special relationships. And it's interesting, recently in the text, it's saying that those special relationships are the very seed bed for developing holy relationships, isn't it? It's saying you got to take those special relationships. Yes, maybe you establish them in a special way, but now it's your job to transform them into holy relationships, into loving relationships. So those very relationships that began as specialness are the work of the Holy Spirit to transform into holy relationships. And just start where you are with what you have. And the miracles will come to you in those relationships. So, okay, so we have governments, and they're not going to be over tomorrow. Even though we see we're under no laws but God's, right? We still have laws that are on the books that we have to pay attention to. But to what degree are we giving the attention to the higher laws? These laws under which I am only under these divine laws. That's the work that the Course is bringing to us. And And this is like a declaration of independence higher than any other. Higher. It's almost like mind-blowing that it could even come to us in the most tumultuous age. You know, the middle of the 20th century, when we've got 2 world wars, we've got all this racial strife, we've got genocide that's unimaginable has just happened. And all of a sudden, now here's this Course in Miracles. You can hardly even believe that it's here. And then it goes on, you know, and you read along. And then it says, oh, don't worry about it. You're under no laws but God's. Well, what are the laws of God's? Well, the laws of God are love, safety, certainty, forgiveness, purity, hope, beauty, happiness, perfect happiness. What scripture ever said God's will for you? He's got a plan for you. It's a pretty good plan. And God's plan for you is perfect happiness. God's plan for you is for you to actually realize your heaven on earth in your lifetime, whatever that looks like. That's his plan for you. So perfect joy, constant joy, it says. Constant joy. You know, not joy that's, oh, it's joyful now, but tomorrow I'll probably have a problem and I'll be unhappy. No, it doesn't say that. It says constant joy. Constant joy. You reach this point where your joy is unaffected by anything external. Even your body, you know, like I had a challenging week, right? I think it was just starting last week. I can hardly believe I delivered that last talk last week, the day after I had this. I had an dental implant removed, and it's worse than having just a tooth pulled, right? It's like a metal structure they've got screwed up into your jaw, and now they got to take it out, and it was not easy. And I was in agony for about 3 or 4 days, and it's bleeding all over the place. And so anyhow, I had a rough week, and I'm saying, oh yeah, you're not a body. You're not a body. Well, yeah. Try telling yourself that when you're like up for 4 hours at night in pain and you're taking the pills and you're still in pain. And I can appreciate that, you know. We have some clients that are in a lot of pain right now, and I can appreciate it. It silences you. You know, it really does. Especially when you feel helpless to do anything about it. So, okay, well, I just wrote it out and I'm better now. And I took the antibiotics and whatever. I took the pills that it says you think that you're under those laws. Well, I took them anyway, and they did help. But now I'm back in the flow, and I want to get this. I think we all want to get this, right? I'm under no laws but God's. And what is that? And how can that impact our life? And how do we live our daily life knowing that? You know, once you read that, I'm under no laws but God's, your mind will never quite be the same. I'm telling you, it's like, and that's the thing with freedom, like liberation, right? When you go up to the door, right? You're kind of up to the door. You go up to the door and it says on there, okay, walk through this door, you're going to be free. well, first you don't believe it, right? You don't. And then the more you hang out at the door, and that's what we've all been doing. We've all been hanging out at the door, and the door is called this Course in Miracles, right? So there's the door. We've all been hanging out there. We've all been looking at it, different angles, reading it, this and that. Okay. Now, have we walked through the door? I'm not so sure. Not so sure we've walked through the door, but we're getting closer to the door. And we're also, maybe we got 1 foot over the threshold, like we're, okay, let's go. We're going to go through. And we're getting closer. And I think we're going closer because we're together walking that way. Often it says you cannot enter heaven by yourself, and nobody is crucified alone. So let's just get this. This is a collaborative venture. There's no accident. We're studying this Course in Miracles together. We're taking these steps together. We have to take them together. And we are taking them together. And we are getting more clarity. What's involved. And it is helping. And I must say, we are experiencing more joy than we ever have. Even when we have a tooth pulled, so I just kept saying to myself, this too will pass, give it a few days, it'll be better. And indeed it was. And okay, I'm sorry it happened, but I couldn't help it. And it is what it is. It's okay. And use the medical science the best you can. And yes, you're under no laws but God's, but maybe sometimes an antibiotic is helping you fight off infection. And maybe a painkiller pill is helping you sleep through the night. So don't totally poo-poo it, but at the same time, see, there's a higher law. There is a higher law. And we're moving towards that. I am spirit. I can be free of suffering today. I will receive whatever I request. These are powerful statements. They have so much power in them. And we will receive the power to the degree we embrace them in ourselves as our truth. And also see the subtle ways we sabotage it, Like when it says, I will receive whatever I request, that is a true statement, but what is your subconscious mind requesting? We look at that a lot in rebirthing. When we work with people about their personal lie, their most negative thought about themselves, that would be a very deep-seated subconscious judgment you have about yourself that's negative. It's not the truth, but it's the foundation of your ego, right? So if you haven't unraveled that, then that's also what you're requesting. I will receive whatever I request. Well, if you're requesting to get results that proves you're not good enough, you're going to get those results. So see how deep this is, this cleansing, this forgiveness process. It goes very deep into the subconscious, and you have to make sure you've turned over every rock and you've looked at every shadow. You can do it kind of en masse if you're at a certain level where you say, okay, I don't want any negative thoughts about myself sabotaging me. But you still have to have gone through those steps where you're introspecting and you're looking and you're owning, oh yeah, I do have low self-esteem thought that I can't do it, or I'm not good enough, or I'm whatever. And you have to, process those through. Otherwise, that's what you're requesting. And it's true, I will receive whatever I request, but you have to also make sure you've cleared out enough of the subterfuge of your subconscious mind that you're not requesting that stuff anymore. You see, so it's a deep process. And then you can say, well, I can be free of suffering today. I'm under no laws but God's. And any thought that I have that's going to produce suffering, I've looked at it, I've forgiven it in myself, and I've let it go. You see, so it's a process. I know when I first made that connection with that 76, lesson 76, I saw that and I said, wow, why is it 76? And then I thought, oh, yeah, Declaration of Independence, 1776. And then I made the correlation and I said, well, this is like a Declaration of Independence written in our time that's even higher than that. All men are created equal and everyone has these unalienable rights, life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. And then it's even the language is in the course. God's will for me is perfect happiness. There is one life, and that I share with God. It's like life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. It's all in there. It's all in there. This is the new Declaration of Independence, Course in Miracles. It supersedes anything before it. And it came out of the New World. Interesting. Yeah, so it's a great gift. Tarsing called it the gift for all mankind, and it came out of the New World, and it'll be here for thousands of years. So don't worry, just bring it into application. It's here, it's given. Thank you. Does anybody have anything to say? Want to ask a question or? I have kind of a little pipe dream because I feel like life prepared me for some way to have Tarsing as my teacher, who had the direct contact with Dr. Schucman. And so he kind of transmitted that to me. And I feel very confident that I can talk about the Course in Miracles to any person on the planet, even people in high places, and communicate what it actually is and get it across. And so I'm kind of just observing if that connection is going to come about. I don't know if it will. And I'm not in any hurry. I'm not going anywhere. And so it'll be interesting because I think America is going through a turmoil, and it's not a civil war of arms yet. Perhaps it could turn into that. I don't think it will, but it's certainly a civil war of ideology, and we have to kind of nip that in the bud because whether we accept it or not, the rest of the world kind of does look to the U.S. for kind of a guidance, almost a spiritual guidance that transcends all others. And we're not living up to it. We're not rising to it somehow. And we could be. But I think we have to go through some kind of a cleansing, some kind of an awakening, and that hasn't happened yet. And I think the Course in Miracles is a key element in that. But we'll see. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful we'll get out of this mental institution soon. Yes, sir.
You know what one of the big things I've learned from you and Sandra is the unholy trinity of fear, anger, and guilt. Because when things are going wrong, and particularly you're talking about those in power over other people, their motivation is one or more of that unholy trinity.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, Adrian, I don't think it became so clear to us as in the past maybe year and a half with our work that you could trace every problem in your life to one of those three. And that even in our work with, personal people on a one-to-one basis, but even in our trainings, we're focusing on those things so much more than we used to do, because we know people have to clear that fear, guilt, and anger. And if you can clear those three things, man, you're on the road to enlightenment. It's just automatic. It puts you right there, because those are such major blocks. And the Course even talks about them. The Course talks about your sinlessness, which would be the overcoming of guilt. The Course talks about giving up your attack thoughts, which would be overcoming anger. And of course, it talks about fear all the time. I'm under no laws but God's. Fear is never justified in any form. There's nothing to fear. It's dealing with fear all the time. So the Course, and I like the way you called it, the unholy trinity.
Yeah.
Those are definitely the three biggies. Yeah, those are definitely the three biggest things that we all have. Yeah. Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you for joining us. And it was totally off the cuff. And because I'm here in Philadelphia and I'm thinking about this Declaration of Independence, oh my goodness. At its time, it was revolutionary, but now we look back at it, it's kind of a quaint little document that a lot of people didn't bring into application, even the ones that wrote it, and not that they should be held accountable, like people often ask us about Leonard Orr. Leonard Orr was the founder of Rebirthing. And then they say, oh, yeah, well, he wrote all these books about immortality and overcoming death and da-da-da-da-da. And then he died. He died when he was 81, right? And so they want to throw all that out and say, well, he was just a mad genius, but he was insane. But then I give him this example. I said, okay, well, that's true, what you're saying. He did not realize it. But neither did Leonardo realize human flight. But Leonardo was the first one back in the, 1500s to start drawing flying machines and winged men and things, machines you could put on and get up there and flap. And none of them worked. None of them worked. He did not discover the flying machine, quote unquote. However, that work that he did laid the groundwork of human aspiration that then 500 years later, we get to the Wright brothers and they make the breakthrough. And before you know it, okay, flight, no problem whatsoever. But had it not been for Leonardo positing those possibilities, the evolution, the ascent towards flight would not have happened. Maybe it would have taken another 1,000 years. I don't know. But the same with Leonard Orr. He posits this premise that death is a function of consciousness, right? And the Course says the same thing. Course in Miracles would say the same thing. It's your thoughts that are killing you. It's your ego that believes in death. And it's these thoughts that you have to deal with. So there's this positing of a truth that maybe we haven't, as humans, evolved into realizing it. Just like Jefferson didn't realize all men are created equal. He had a couple hundred slaves back in Monticello that he never freed. Washington at least saw the error of his ways and he had it in a clause, well, when I die, my slaves are free. So, but Jefferson never did. And he actually died bankrupt, Jefferson. And his estate had to be sold by the bank, and his family totally lost it because he never handled stuff, financially. So, so same with lofty ideas that are posited by genius kind of men like Leonard Orr. Interesting, they had the same name, Leonardo Leonard. But they didn't realize it. But other people they affected, and other people took up the mantle and kept going. And I think that's going to be the way it is, even with the Course in Miracles. Because, Dr. Schuchman said, because Tarsing asked her about it, because she said, there probably won't be very many people that get this. And Krishnamurti said the same thing to Tarsing. Tarsing was both of those people's main student, right? So the main student is asking, what do you think humanity has a chance with this stuff you're saying? They said, I don't know. Bad. I don't know if humanity's ready for this. And Dr. Schuchman even said, this Course in Miracles is not for this age. It's like it's in an age that the human consciousness can't even grasp it somehow. And he said, well, then why did he bring it in? She said, well, a few people might get it. And Krishnamurti said the same thing. Tarji asked him, well, how many people you think heard you in 60 years of you giving these lectures all over the world to hundreds of thousands of people? He said, 5 or 6. Now, that's pretty sobering when you think about it, because he showed up day after day, month after month, year after year, giving these talks. And then, when somebody asked him, well, how many people do you think you really totally transformed? 5 or 6. When you look at Jesus, 12, and even they made some errors. You know what I mean? Even they didn't get the fullness of it. But I look at it this way. Thank God we blundered into it, and it's here, and we have a chance. And it's definitely going to impact our life for the better, even if we don't go all the way. It's like man evolves in increments. And yes, you'd like to have a epiphany of a total awakening, but that's kind of rare, like it's mostly incremental awakening that we're going through. And thank goodness we have something like the Course to incrementally awaken us. And here it is. So, well, I've blah, blah, blahed on for another 10 minutes. So, but hey, you guys, it's great. Next weekend's mantra breathing, I think, is going to be really powerful. It's going to be on surrender. And what that is, how do we do it? What does it give us? What are the fears that come up? What are the resistances? So we're going to cover that. And also, I think probably the Friday blessing will be about that. All right. Well, God bless you all.